France 2, Morocco 0, as one of the powerhouses of world football just keeps striding forward, and they're actually making it look quite easy now. Now, this France team came into the tournament as one of the favourites to go the whole way and win the lot, and a performance like this makes it very clear to see why. It almost feels like they're yet to get out of second gear really at the World Cup, but they are just cruising their way through the tournament. They just beat a very good Morocco side comfortably. You know, Morocco weren't really able to put up much of a fight. Of course, they tried their best, but France were just way too good for them. Let's take a look at how that played out tactically. Because Morocco these days do press a little bit higher than what they did at the last World Cup. They've become a side that wants to be a bit more aggressive in their approach, a bit more proactive if you like. And they were the same in this game. They were trying to apply pressure to the ball, but I just think they got the system wrong. I think it was a little bit flawed and therefore often too easy for France to play out from the back. So what we would often see naturally is the two French centre-backs kind of split either side of the goalkeeper. But what we would see for Morocco was Brahim Diaz from the right-hand side coming forward and more central to join El Khanous in the high press. But the problem was, there's then just so much space down this side of the pitch for France. You know, in a normal world, you would think Hakimi's going to make the jump up to Luca Digne, but it just didn't happen. So for France, it was too easy to move the ball down this side. Now, that wasn't necessarily always the immediate pass that they played. You know, as Maignan plays the ball here, Diaz sort of curves his run in. Morocco are trying to lock to one side of the pitch, but France have just got too many good players. The Morocco press seemed to lack that bite and urgency and grit that it really needed, and then France would just be able to find the far side and have plenty of space to move forward, or they actually could go a more direct route straight from the goalkeeper out to Luca Digne, and yeah, just a little bit too easy for France in the first phase. And this is why, particularly in the first half, they went on to be very dominant on the ball. Now, with France often able to play out from the back quite easily, the challenge for them becomes the same challenge that we have seen for so many teams already at this World Cup, and that is, can you break down a block? Now, it wasn't necessarily always a low block from Morocco. There were times when they would try and get pressure on the ball from the mid-block, but certainly now they are in a 4-4-2 defensive shape. They've got plenty of numbers behind the ball, and for France, it's about trying to find a way through them. And of course, you know, the scoreline or the time of the goals tells us that France did struggle to do that for a bit, but I think throughout the game, they were threatening. You know, this wasn't like the Paraguay game where France struggled to create chances. Today, or last night, it was just a case of missing the big chances that came their way. So the way that France looked to approach this was initially in sort of a 4-1 shape. So we saw the two fullbacks initially holding a very deep starting position, which is something that Brazil eventually did against Morocco back in the first game of the group stage, if you can remember that. And the reason why you want to try and do that is to try and draw these Moroccan wingers out so that then there is more space in behind them. However, initially this didn't necessarily really work, so what we saw as the game went on was Rabiot from midfield in here, dropping a little bit deeper on the left-hand side. The fullback is then going to go further forward, and Desiré Doué is now going to move inside. And this is what we saw really from France. The left-hand side dynamic was quite clear between Doué and Digne. These were the two trying to make things happen. And then on the right-hand side, it was actually Ousmane Dembélé and Elise, which, again, let's just highlight that. Elise and Dembélé. Like, it's just an absolute joke. The quality that this France team possess is absurd. And what we saw quite a lot from them really in the first half was trying to go round the Moroccan block. You know, it's not always easy to go through the middle. There's going to be two centre forwards, there's going to be two central midfielders, there's the centre backs, and of course with the wide players tucked as well. It is quite difficult to move through Morocco. So France in the first half very much opted for an approach around the outside, which is completely understandable. They can create these 2 versus 2s out wide, and they've got some of the best players in the world to try and approach these situations. So this is one of the reasons why France was so dangerous, because when Dembélé and Elise and Doué are getting a lot of touches on the ball, they're going to be dangerous. They're going to cause problems, and they absolutely did. But arguably one of the most important things for France here was just how high up the pitch they were able to get. Because when they play this simple ball from Koundé to Dembélé, Dembélé carries the ball. He doesn't necessarily dribble, he's not necessarily confrontational and immediately takes on his man. He just carries the ball forward down the line. And of course what that does is it forces the Moroccan defence to drop deeper to try and defend their own defensive area. But this just meant that France could really push numbers just absurdly high up the pitch. You can see here just how high the centre-backs are. This is France really on top. They're dominating the game. And the great thing when a team does this is that you can counter-press and suffocate the opposition. So let's say France do try something a little bit risky with Elise. They lose the ball in the middle of the park. Well, France then have so many players that are able to get back around the ball. And we saw that for the first goal. France actually lose possession almost, but the defenders are so high, they're able to win it back. And then, of course, Mbappe produced a moment of pure magic. Now, the thing that actually makes this France team so scary is that Mbappe isn't the only one that can do that. All 4 of the forwards are capable of it. And France really feel like the one team at the tournament that are using, legitimately 4 forwards and only 2 midfielders. Most teams are using 3 forwards and 3 midfielders. So for France, it gives them more creative output on the pitch, players more capable perhaps of producing moments of just absurd quality. And I think this was a threat that we saw throughout the game, particularly when France were able to play in a front 2 with either Elise in the 10 position or actually quite often Ousmane Dembele moving a bit more central. And this is the great thing about the French versatility. They can move into different zones of the pitch. But now France are in a front 2. And they're actually going to play up against the Moroccan back 2, or the 2 centre-backs, I should say. And if I am a Moroccan centre-back in this situation, this isn't a game I want to be playing. I do not ever, ever, ever want to find a situation where it's me and my centre-back partner against Mbappe plus 1 more. That's just an absolute nightmare. It's a horror situation to try and deal with. And the French were able to exploit this occasionally, sporadically, with counter movements. So as Dembele comes towards the ball, Mazraoui's got a real decision to make. Does he go with Dembele, which you feel like you've got to do because he's got too much quality to give him time and space? But if you do that, then Mbappe's going to run in behind. Or do you drop off to mark Mbappe, but now Dembele's going to get more touches on the ball? And we can see this here. Dembele never touches the ball, but his presence alone draws Mazraoui out of position, and Kylian Mbappe is then able to go into that space. And it was one of the first times that France had a real chance in this game. And that was the warning sign. Later on, of course, much later in the second half, we saw it for the second goal. It's the 2 French forwards running at the 2 Moroccan centre-backs. This time, they choose to go with the runner. Mbappe goes in behind. It forces the defenders to drop off. But then Dembele just has too much time on the ball and scores a good goal. I do think the keeper could have done better. But it's just how dangerous this France team are. The second you find yourself in a 2 versus 2 against the forwards, as a defender, you are in a world of trouble. Now, weirdly enough, it didn't really feel like France got going until they scored those 2 goals, yet they didn't go on to score any more. And I think that's just how impressive this team is. They don't really tend to get out of first or second gear, but still they just completely and utterly dominate the opposition. The French centre-backs were so high, they were able to suffocate Morocco, and Morocco didn't really throw any punches. For me, I didn't think they did anywhere near enough to cause serious problems for this France side. But then we get to the last 30 minutes. It happens at 1-0, but especially at 2-0. Morocco are trying to open up, right? They're trying to save their World Cup. They're trying to stay in the tournament. So you start to see more numbers committed higher up the pitch. Now, Morocco didn't throw the kitchen sink at this. This wasn't, centre-backs playing up front. But just naturally, you try and be a bit more expansive. You take a few more risks on the ball. You play with a little more urgency in your action. And this is where France just steamroll through teams on the transition. The Moroccan midfielders are taking risks in the middle of the park. And now if you nick it, the ability for this 4 to absolutely destroy you on the break is horrifying. And of course, it could be Ryan Cherky that comes into this. It can be Barcola. Mateta got some minutes from the bench in this game. There's just so much quality that France can hit you with on the break. This is when they're at the most dangerous. When the opposition try and play football. When Hakimi goes on a venturing run forward, but leaves so much space in behind, as we saw for the penalty. Hakimi loses the ball incredibly high up the pitch, and Mbappe on the break in that space wins the penalty kick, which of course he didn't score. I think that whole situation was a bit of a mess. But again, you see the French threat. They're so difficult to beat, because if you sit off, they've got too much quality that's going to eventually unlock your defence. But if you go really high and try and play against them, they just hit you with so much speed and so much quality and speed of thought in transition. And that's why this France team was so scary and why they had just way too much for Morocco. Now, by the end of the game, I actually think that France made this look quite easy. I was expecting a real test. France versus Morocco, that's a great battle. We saw it at the last World Cup. You think Morocco are going to be stern, difficult to beat, and throw their punches in transition. But the game just didn't really play out that way. France were, like I said, in second gear the whole game. They found it quite comfortable, quite easy. For Morocco, I feel like they'll be disappointed. It's a missed opportunity. Of course, this France team is the best in the world, realistically. But I just feel that Morocco could have done a little bit more. Could they have taken a risk earlier in the game? Were there moments where they could have attacked faster, in a more direct manner? Possibly. But ultimately, I think they were a little bit scared or too aware of what France had to offer. And what France have to offer is immense quality all over the pitch. France are the best team at this World Cup. There's no doubt about that. Now, the best team doesn't necessarily always win the tournament. Of course, France have got big tests coming up in the next 2 games. But they've got a very decent chance of going all the way, because of the quality and because of the tactical decisions from Deschamps, his ability to get players close together, and he's platforming them really well at this World Cup. He's being a bit more attacking with his approach, which is good to see. I think this France team deserves that, and they're getting that, and they're playing very, very well. So it's France 2, it's Morocco 0. It's a little bit easy, and it's a statement from France to the rest of this tournament that they are here to take over this World Cup. Will someone be able to stop them? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Who at this tournament has what it takes to stop this France team? Is it Spain? Is it England? Is it Argentina? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and let me know which player, other than Mbappe, because he's obvious, which player is the most important for this French team. Let me know what you think down below. But apart from that, we are now finished for today. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.